Hi everyone, this is Sammy and welcome to Under the Radar. This is a series where I try to take synths or plugins that are perhaps not very well known, or if they are known, maybe not really talked about enough. In this case I've got ArcSyn, which I'm pretty sure most of you have probably never seen or heard of, but it is actually a very interesting plugin, which is why I'm featuring it today. Now, one of the things I like about this plugin is it's capable of some truly mad and interesting sounds, while at the same time having a very simple, pretty basic layout. The way it does this is kind of the way it's got all these different things compacted into small spaces. So basically, if you look at the GUI, you're seeing 3 oscillators and 2 filters and an effects set. That's the kind of thing you see just about most synths these days have at least something like that. But here, in this case, each one of those areas can do some really interesting, crazy stuff. Now, I want to put a word into the GUI here from Satya Tunes. I think he did a really good job. It's got a really nice retro feel. And at the same time, it's quite easy to see everything. It's very legible and clean. If you take a look at the earlier versions of this plugin, I think it was far, far less appealing. And when you switch back to the new GUI, you appreciate just how clean it makes this GUI look. So let's get started. First of all, I'm going to go to the initialize patch right here and show you what we got. So the buildup of this synth is basically you got these 3 oscillators, but if you click here, you've actually got quite a lot of modes. So this is what I was talking about, this compacted set of features. So you've got your basic waveforms here, and then you've got a whole slew of interesting ways to modulate a lot of those waveforms. Then you've got FM and harmonics, and a whole bunch of other things which we'll check out as we go. So let's take a look first of all at its basic sound character. We'll go with just a sawtooth here. I'm going to route this just to filter 1. And then you can hear the sawtooth, and we'll take a look at the filter selection here. A lot of these you've probably seen around. Some of these are pretty interesting and perhaps unique. I'm not sure if I've seen them anywhere else. But let's start with the sort of analog modeled filter, the SVF low pass. So it's not exactly mind-blowing, but it's very nice. So if we play like a basic riff here, it's got a nice character. So it plays really nicely, and the other filters are nice too. See, that's got some more high-end bite to it. And the other thing it's got here is some really nice clipping modes, so we can do tube. So next we've got the effects section, and the effects section has a lot of really nice basic like chorus, phaser type of things that you are probably familiar with, but they just sound really pleasant here too. And you got chorus. And then if you want a delay, I like bounce delay, for example. And then you've got something like the quad delay here, which is really, it gives you these really, really nice long tails. Now, I mean, you can hear that this delay here has got this really nice stereo spread. That's not something you're going to get with just a default delay algorithm. It's been tweaked a little bit to give it that really nice stereo spread that just works so well with the basic sound of the synthesizer. So I really like how useful these effects actually are. They haven't just been stuck in as sort of default algorithms. They've been tweaked a little bit. What's really cool next, though, is the multi-tap delay. This is just so much fun because I actually haven't seen, or maybe I have. I think PSP's got a multi-tap delay. It's pretty complex. But on a synthesizer, I don't think I've seen a multi-tap delay that can do what this does. And of course, it's all subject to modulation as well. So let's just take a look at what we have here. You've got the pre-delay, the delay itself, not synchronized. Then you've got the delay level, And if you take a look here, you can see these shapes, so we can go gradually go up or down, and you've got linear and exponential curves. Then you've got the panning as well. So what's really cool here is you can do like left panning, right panning, or you can just go left to right. But then you got this here, this random, and that's really neat. So let's change this. So you can get like a granular sound here. You can add some reverb. And then take a look at the frequency shifter. So it's just really, really interesting how you can get what is basically like a granular kind of sound just from the multi-tap delay. Let's go over to Wavetable and take a listen. Switch these around. Or even switch these around. Randomize these. So that's a pretty gorgeous kind of sound just from using the effects section, and then we switch over to Wavetable. Now, by the way, if you look at this shape control, you can see right here, we're on wave 33. So this shape control is where you're going to get all your animation and variation from. I'm actually going to stop using this MIDI file right now. So let's go back to looking at the oscillators here, and we'll start off at the top. So like I said, you got your basic waveforms. Let's just open this up. And the shape control does nothing here. But if we start going down to, say, the pulse 2, control the pulse width, and we can go to our LFO here, go to the destination, shape. Now, the LFO section is another obviously interesting part of the synth. You can see here you've got like a step LFO kind of setup, but even this is a little different from what I've seen before, and I'll get to that in a moment. For now, though, let's just assign this LFO to the shape. And let's go through some of these. So we've got ArcSyn. Cut saw and width saw. Make this a little faster. And then, of course, I've got this brought in right here. Let's just listen to the oscillator one by itself. Filter saw, stepped, and there's quite a long list here, so I'll go through some of these, but I'll skip some as well. Let's go to the super saws. Actually, I'll come back to the super saw in a minute. Let's go to the FM. So I really love when you get these FM modules and synths. What's really nice here is I don't have to go into the matrix or do any routing. I've just got FM algorithms right here. Let's turn on some reverb here. So pretty cool stuff right away. Now let's go to the, let's see, we've got ring mod here. And, well, you could explore these with the demo. I want to show you right now, perhaps one of my favorite modules in here, besides the bread and butter useful stuff, is something crazy here, the digital noise. I just think that is pretty awesome just by itself. So let's take a look at the LFO structure here. So let's set up, say, 3 steps. I'll turn this down and bring up the sawtooth. You can see that going through the steps there. Now when you click here, you can assign all these different kinds of shapes. So we've got curves for like ramps, triangle, steps. What's really cool though is a lot of these have a random actual parameter here too, so we can have a different step every time it goes through. So here's a ramp switch or a random 4-step. Let's take a listen to this. We'll assign it to the filter cutoff first of all. Oh, by the way, you actually have to assign it right here and sort of bring up the strength. So let's do that. Now, let's change that to the shape here of the oscillator. Sorry, oscillator 1. Go to something like the FM. We can synchronize this. Even have this go in random. So this starts to get into some really random territory, which is the kind of thing you might normally associate with maybe say like a modular synthesizer. Well, that's the kind of thing that a lot of people like to do with modular synthesizers, but here it's just basically really quick and easy to set up and save, obviously, as a patch. So let's go to LFO 1 and change the shape on oscillator 2. a random curve step. There are some here. Now we can do the same thing and assign it to the filter. Now, let's go over to this right here, which is, well, we've got a number of different options here, but we can go to like aliasing. Lastly, repeat, which is probably my favorite. As the name suggests, it's kind of like a repeater of sorts. Take a listen. I think this basically increases the delay line. It sounds a bit like a comb filter. So slow this down a little bit. It's just such a shame that this repeat filter doesn't show up in here. It would be really neat if it did. Now what I love about this is we're not just doing this with effects and processing after the fact. This is actually going into the oscillator algorithms and creating all this sort of random chaos, but we're still retaining this really gorgeous musical sound underneath it all with the supersaw here. Now speaking of the supersaw, that's the other thing I want to bring up here is, yes, it can do these really crazy disintegrated, pulled apart sounds, but it can also function really nicely in its own right as just a basic synthesizer. Okay, so let's initialize this and go on to something else. I'm going to show you how it sounds. It's basically bread and butter synth. This is based on Exhale. You probably noticed that when I press play, but I've modified it a little bit. So let's go straight to the Super Saw. Now, it is sort of detuned by default. You gotta kind of pull it back a little bit, bring it back into tune. So we're bringing a sawtooth here. Alright, now one thing I should point out is this is basically a monophonic path until we get to the two filters, which can go left and right, as you saw me do earlier. But I don't know, there's no unison on here, and I did speak to the developer about that, and I don't think it's really possible to implement it in this synth. So what I mean by unison is basically just stacking the voices and then spreading them left and right, which you can do on so many synthesizers. But anyway, no worries, because it still sounds really nice, especially once you add a delay. And if you really wanted to, you could route these into, say, filters 1 and 2. So we could put this in the middle, and this one to filter 2, and then just pan them like this. But then you do have to set up everything twice. It's not a big deal. Then we could go to the mod wheel and assign it to both filters. Let's see, we want filter frequency. Now one of these definitely sounds a little loud than the other. That's because of the level control here. It's a bit better. So, very nice basic sound. As soon as you add in a nice delay here, it comes to life. Add in a bit of EQ. And that frequency shifter. Such a nice effect. You could also route these in parallel to the actual synthesized sound. Let's just go with one here. And as I showed earlier, we have some really cool filter clipping modes here. So let's just go with one oscillator for now. Tube. And let's go with a wavetable. Now we can go with like sine clip. Sine fold. Ripple. I'm guessing this is a distortion. Let's go with bandpass. that's enough of that. Let's go to so quite useful. Let's go to our other riff right here. This one's pretty abrasive. Let's go to tube. This is what I mean about it being a really nice basic synthesizer as well. Shapeable envelopes, very helpful. Always happy to see those. So yeah, I spent quite a lot of time just thinking about how to show off this synthesizer best, and in the end I couldn't really decide on a way to systematically show everything that it can do. So I've tried my best here to show you some of the things that I think are great about this synth. There's so many other neat things here, like for example you've got 2 modulation sources plus a modifier. Now some of these I really don't know what they do because they're not really documented in the manual, which is, in my opinion, for what, an $89 synth, I actually find I don't really mind. It adds to the fun a little bit. You can sit there and try to figure it out yourself. There are some things I do understand, like you can smoothen the sources here. And some of these you just got to basically try them out, I suppose. Yeah, absolutely. I think some of these are going to be like the way you interact with source A and source B. So if we bring in LFO2 into the equation here and change this to something random. So clearly I don't really know what's going on here, but it's fantastic. It's just so different to working with a more traditional synthesizer that doesn't give you these kinds of interesting randomization tools. So I mentioned earlier modular, and it's this kind of reason. These are kind of logical modules that you might buy in a modular setup that make them do all these kinds of really interesting sound design tricks that you don't normally do with most basic synthesizers. So really for me, this feels like a little modular kind of style setup. You've got these individual modules here, which are designed to do their own different things, like whether it be ring modulation or FM, or even this digital noise. And then you've got all these functions in here that you would typically patch up in a modular synthesizer if you're trying to do this kind of thing. One other thing I really like is how we can also pan, let's do some series, the effects. So let's do that again over here. Let's go with the effects pan, which is in here somewhere. There it is. Let's make this a mono delay so you can hear that. And say this was a bit crusher. Let's try a different chord here. I'm trying to play one-handed, sorry. Or we could even change this to an envelope. It might make more sense. This is basically giving it like a swell. So we'll do this. And that, guys and girls, is my take on ArcSyn and why I think this is under the radar and deserves to be taken a look at. Now, if this kind of thing intrigues you, I do encourage you to go and download the demo. The price of synth is $89. Now, in the name of transparency, just to make sure things are clear, I didn't purchase this synth. I did approach ArcSyn and ask them for a license in exchange for a video. And I want to thank ArcSyn for doing that and also being patient, because I've probably had this now for 4 or 5 months. And actually, I've been thinking or trying to think of a way to do a systematic overview and review of this plugin, and eventually I realized it just wasn't going to happen. For one reason, there's too much going on in here for me to really cover systematically. I think it would just take too long and would be a bit too kind of boring and dry. On the other hand, every time I fired it up to get to know it better and think of a way I could systematically show it off, I actually just got completely lost in sound design and playing around, and so I just couldn't really get there in the end. If you have any suggestions, by the way, for other plugins or synths that you think are under the radar, I'd love to hear about it. Do put them in the comments below. I'll check them out. And if I can see it too, if I can see why there's something really special there, I'll try to feature them in this series. Well, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.